and watch me educate. Yeah, we been could've started, but it's never late. Do it for my kids, yeah, let's set it straight. Do it for your kids, gotta set it straight. It's time to regulate. We need change now. We need solo, we need...
Hey guys, welcome back to the podcast. Dr. Shah, welcome to the studio.
Thank you so much for having me on the show and in the studio.
Well, you know, you and I met, was it back in 2019?
Around there, it was before COVID, at a conference in Florida.
Yeah, 2019. And we've been friends ever since. And, you know, you actually helped me out on a horrible experience that you made much better. I was sued by a patient wrongly, but got our day in court after 4 years. Such a nightmare. And I decided one of these days we need to get together. We've been trying to get this going, and here you are. So I'm going to ask you a couple of questions for our viewers who might not know you. Now, you were born in Iran, raised in Germany, but you eventually came to the United States. What's one defining childhood memory that really shaped your worldview and maybe trickles into the way that you practice dentistry or run your practice?
Yes, so back to being time to finally meet you. It's an honor. I've followed your career over the years. You're quite a force of nature yourself, and that's what colleagues are there for, to collaborate and find ways to make our lives easier together. In terms of the initial stages in Iran, I was almost 9 years old when the regime, the Shah's rule came to an end after 2,500 plus years, and the clerics took over. And I can recall being in the halls on a date that it happened when Khomeini died. It was in 89. I was right around 9 years old, and seeing water cannons and people pouring in the street, and it was quite an experience that sticks with you throughout the ages. But that was the start of a journey through 3 different cultures, 3 different religions, and ending up in dental school and becoming a professional. And it's been pretty exciting. You know, Germany was no different. It was also, when I got there, you had in 89 the German Wall come down, and they won the World Cup in soccer in 90. So there was kind of a lot of commotion going on around that time, a lot of historic events. Yep, it was. Those will shape you over time.
So you grew up between 3 cultures. Did you ever feel like you didn't belong anywhere because of the fact that your cultural experiences were so different? You know, I know a lot of younger people, they have a hard time figuring out who they are, where do they fit in. It seems to me that growing up within a lot of different cultures could either go one way or the other for you.
You know, what I've learned is that if you are fortunate or unfortunate and you have to leave your homeland for whatever reason, that humans are humans. You're going to have good humans, you're going to have bad humans, you're going to have humans that have drastic views. But what I've learned is if you want to fit in a culture, you have to adapt to that culture. You know, for me, I didn't encounter much racism and being excluded from anything, really, because I was always hardworking. I put my head down. I fitted in. When I got to Germany, I learned the German language right away. You communicate in German language. When I came to the States, you know, for other people that are coming in, it's very important that you fit into the English culture. That was 20-some years ago. And quickly learned English and tried to do the right things. And when you do the right things in life, you will always overcome the evil, and the good will prevail, no matter where you are. So I didn't really encounter that. Actually, for me, it was more like a learning experience. How can I do better in this society was what I would ask myself.
So when survivability and stability were kind of uncertain, because let's face it, the ousting of the Shah was huge. I mean, for people who aren't quite as old as I am, they probably don't remember it, but I remember it was plastered all over the news every single night. And that makes me wonder, is that what gave you the grit and the determination to do some of the things you have done?
Yeah, you were a little older than me. When he got out in '79, it was a close ally of the U.S. It was very advanced. They're still flying F-16s around that were sold to him at that time. It was number one or number two from just about every category you can imagine: science, healthcare, education in general, just about every first or second. Now they are first or second from the bottom in just about every category because the people that were, a lot of them that were educational, that are very smart, or some were running around in Beverly Hills or elsewhere in the States or in Europe, and there was a big exodus. So German people inherently, and Persian people, I mean, inherently have a lot of desire to succeed in commerce, and they're one of the most successful minority groups now in the United States, if not the most successful one. But we're taught to be diligent about education, about business. As we grow up, it's very important. If you ask 10 Persians, 9 of their parents were insisting they become a lawyer or a doctor. So, kind of always wanted to make my dad proud by becoming a doctor. That's what he wanted.
So you made a reference to being Persian. Have you ever seen the Axis of Evil comedy tour?
Yes.
That guy's joke floors me every single time. No, I'm not Iranian. I'm Persian, like the cat. Meow. So that's actually one of the things that that fascinates me about the region is their sense of history and belonging to that history. I think in the United States we have such a short history, and I think that it affects the way we think about ourselves and the rest of the world. Was there a time that, kind of in that vein, where you felt invisible and someone told you that your voice mattered?
I can't say I ever felt invisible. I was always either the troublemaker or the hardworking kid, depending on what period of my life I looked at. The Germans were always so friendly to me. They always took me in. You hear a lot of stories about Germany this, Germany that. I had the greatest experience for the 10 years I lived in Germany before I came to the States. So, invisible, no. But how to fit in into a different culture if you're a foreigner or a migrant, I mastered that over time. It's not hard to do.
So, talk to me a little bit about the history of Iran and how that history is part of who you are. Is there something from hearing the stories about the Persian Empire that whenever you grew up, it made a mark on you?
I'm a real Persian. Our bloodline dates back 7,500 plus years. It's the most oldest continuous civilization in human history. It started with various empires that have come and gone, and that area of the world sort of always stayed. It's very hard to infiltrate. So that continuous culture in Indus Valley has continued. You had your first hospital that was created in Iran. You had your first university that was created in Iran. You had your first human rights charter that was written in Iran during one of the more famous empires. A lot of innovation, mathematics, chess, a lot of these things come from that area. So, some say innovations don't come out of Middle East anymore as much as they used to, and they're true. But what started as an amazing history of thousands of years in your culinary affairs, in your tapestry, in your art and science, is sort of non-existent right now. So yes, we do pride ourselves in that. Now I'm married to a Southern belle, and we have some Persian American children. So it's interesting to see these two the ancient and the new empire, sort of integrate in
There,
cultures.
there really is a dichotomy there. I hadn't thought about that.
Yes. So Germany was also a world power. So I had the privilege of living in these three societies that have managed to excel. Now the United States excels in, for example, infrastructure in the IT field or innovation of all sorts because of the way we have structured our society, where we reward innovation, we reward hard workers, and that's what it has achieved. Germany has done it in a certain way. The Persians have done it, and somehow I got into the middle of all of it.
So your path into dentistry, I think, is a little bit unusual. I mean, you studied science, but you also studied literature before coming to dentistry. Talk to me a little bit about that, and also end up with how such disparate areas of study have really kind of condensed within you to shape the way that you practice dentistry and the way that you do business.
Yeah, I wanted to be a cardiac surgeon when I first started undergrad here. I finished high school in Germany, and they taught us sort of British English. So I come up here talking about trousers and K's, and once we get into it, I started realizing that I volunteered in my freshman and sophomore year in college at Western, the local hospital. I would go in and then hang out in the OR room, assist surgeons, and I kind of saw their lives. They would talk about their kids being all tattooed up and getting into trouble at school, and they didn't have any time to spend with them. So around my sophomore year, one of my best friends, that who's also now a practicing dentist in Illinois, we used to study together in the library, and he went that route, and I realized, hey, maybe I want to have a life where I can spend more with the kids, family. I can build these things in the future, and I don't have to just excel in one area. I can excel in all areas. So he went, and then right behind him, I applied only to one school, and I got in, and here we are, 20-some years later, 26, 27 years later.
See, now I'm having poor microphone etiquette. I'm bumping my own mic. So, it's interesting to hear you say that. It's a very familiar story to me. I studied with only the med students. Now, I wanted to be a dentist because of the reason that I got into dentistry, which I think I've told you about already. But I had one buddy, and he was talking about he and his wife and how they wanted to have a kid and this and that and the other. And I just looked at him one day and I said, Mauricio, what the hell are you thinking? Why are you going MD then? And he was like, well, great living, this and that. And I said, man, look, if you look at a breakpoint analysis of what MDs pay for, and I knew that was the right tact for him because he was an engineer. When you look at a breakpoint analysis of the debt to income load, and you look at when an MD finally breaks over and is making more money, and then you look at the family life you think you want to have, do you think you're going to get there? So he became a dentist.
Good job.
He actually practices right down the street over there.
That's awesome.
But walking into dental school, do you think you were underestimated because you were the foreign kid or because you spoke funny or whatever? And did you turn that into fuel whenever it came to pushing?
Yeah, I never saw anything impossible as long as you worked hard enough and you applied yourself. Actually, right off the bat, I was the only, at the time, you're talking about many moons ago or 20 years ago, I was the only green card holder in my entire class my freshman year. And then later I became a citizen. That's another story. But at that time, I also wanted to be class president. I was very aggressive in studies. In undergrad, I did it in 2.5 years with a 4.0. I was all gung-ho. And then dental school was a completely different story. I came in, you had your opposition. You had some kids that didn't want you to run or voted against you or what have you. But the vast majority voted for me. I remember it took me one joke to make. Nobody really knew each other. And I got up in front of the class and I said, hey, listen, I have a lot of experience. I was in all these clubs in undergrad. I know how these doctors think. And I'll make sure that all of our exams get canceled. And I think that kind of right there sold the crowd. And and starting off, this is literally my freshman year. Boom, 9/11 happens, and I'm class president, and I have to let the students go that day, and it was quite an experience to be going to dental school at that point in time. I remember we were all sitting in class and we had a little break and somebody's like their airplanes crashing into buildings, and so that was the beginning of how dental school started for the next few years. But it was an exciting time, like when you were a child and everything was more colorful and the candy tasted so much better than it does now. So those memories are still there from dental school. Sometimes you wish you could be back there. You thought that those were your tough times, but it's not necessarily true.
Yeah. I can only imagine though. I remember I had a friend of mine who he was a Sikh, and he got bodily removed from a store because they said he was a terrorist. And I'm sitting here thinking, how would you ever even think that of a Sikh? But he's wearing a turban, and he's got a medallion on him that looks foreign. It was not our proudest moment.
There is a lot of ignorance out there. A lot of ignorance out there. You got to take people for their quality of character, not what they look like, and that's something that we have been fighting for thousands of years in different cultures. Just pure ignorance.
Yeah, absolutely. So, was there a moment in dental school, since we're kind of walking back down memory road, that you remember that you just screwed something up, an embarrassing screw up in dental school that kind of sticks with you?
Yeah, I had one of my best friends who was in optometry school down in Memphis come up to get a root canal done. It was my third year of school, and it was one of my first patient. Actually, it was a filling that turned into a root canal, which I had something to do with. And there was a time where I really got upset at the instructor at there, and we had ourselves a nice little argument while my best friend was in the chair that I went to undergrad with, who was at the time finishing third year in Memphis, and we would go down there all the time and so on. But yeah, that led to ending up in front of the ethics committee and dealing with all of that, where you have no chance to prevail. You're a student; they beat you up pretty good. Your voice is heard, but not really taken seriously. I mean, at the end of the day, they're all friends. That was a rough scenario, third and fourth year on, to be in a clinic environment where she ended up being the head of the whole clinic. So there was always some tension there. I could have kept my mouth shut, but always had a little trouble with authority. I don't like to be subjugated by anyone, no matter what the circumstance.
I think that's a pretty common trait amongst dentists. I mean, most of us are independent practitioners. Most of us don't work. Although, I mean, that is changing with the DSO landscape. But most of us work by ourselves and for ourselves and wouldn't have it any other way. I remember my most embarrassing moment was I had done veneers on a lady, and she had a whole lot of anterior wear, and it was acidic wear and really kind of abrasion wear. She was brushing her teeth too hard, and with the acidic wear on the enamel, she'd eaten into the dentin. And so, I went in, I did this beautifully sculpted scallop on her gums and did my veneers, and I had my temps in, and threw a couple of simple interrupted in there to keep everything together, keep the papilla healthy, and make them heal right. I told her, I said, look, I want you to make sure that whenever you go home, you take 1 teaspoon of salt and you put it in a big glass of water and just make it warm water, put it in your mouth, just kind of let it soak there and spit it out. Don't swish hard, and everything's going to heal up nicely. So she comes back, and I had made the mistake of telling her that the reason this had happened was because she brushed too hard, and she had really acidic foods in her diet. And she's one of those people who's like to put a lemon in their front. Yeah, you've seen them.
All the time.
And so she comes back, and oh my God, it looked like a butcher had gotten in there. Her gums had not healed correctly. The granulation tissue had separated the papilla, and it was all flapped back. And I looked at it, and I'm thinking, I screwed this surgery up. I messed up. Turns out, she decided that if 1 teaspoon was good, well, a half cup was better. Mm-hmm. So she just tore the hell out of her gums. But man, my professor's sitting there looking at me and looking at my work, and I don't think I had a worse day in dental school.
Yes, I see those kind of cases. This reminds me of a time, my very, very, very first patient in dental school, where I was an SRP, and I come in there, I do the probing depths, and he has me start doing like a couple of quads. It was in perio, and I must have spent a good hour in there scraping, and then he comes over and he's like, "What happened? Why is all this calculus still here?" So I wasn't doing it right. It's a learning process, you were scraping for an hour on a patient and you don't get any of the calculus off, you don't know what you're really doing. So
right.
It's part of the process. You got to get thrown in there to learn it. So
no, absolutely. Absolutely. And, there's a reason they call it practicing medicine, right?
We still practice today, 20 years later, I've been practicing now for 20 years clinically and still learning something every day.
Yeah. It's funny, you were talking earlier about 9/11 and when you heard everything. Do you know it was still working behind a drill rig, drilling environmental wells whenever the planes crashed into the Trade Center?
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, we shut down the rig, and our geologist had his radio on, and we just all gathered around. And
when did you graduate?
2012.
2012, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah.
Recent grad-ish.
Not that recent.
So one of the things people probably don't know about you is you made a living being a traveling dentist. I mean, you traveled to hundreds of offices. What was that like? What did you learn from it that you ended up taking? I can only imagine knowing you. I know you were picking bits and pieces out of every single office and finding the strengths and weaknesses. But tell us a little bit about that journey.
Everybody's different. Some people have a desire to have full control of their practices. Some want to have minimal control and want to focus on patients. Some want to travel and not have any of the overhead and the HR problems with the staff. Everybody has a different desire. I wanted to experience all three of them to see what I would want to do with my career. And for a few years after living in Illinois, we spent about 15 years in Illinois. I out of dental school shortly thereafter. I got married. Found a girl in a small town in America, which I was wanted and dreamt of in Germany. I made it a reality and packed up after 5 years in Illinois, moved to California, and I decided it's time to actually learn business the right way, because obviously I wasn't doing it the way it should have been done. So as a consequence, and having overhead and you need to service your obligations, I worked and studied at night. I did the MBA at night, an online program, local community college. Actually, it's not. It's part of Chapman University. It's a big university in California. They had a side program, and I did it, and it was probably one of the best things I've done. But in that time, I would travel during the day, probably 3-4 days a week, to different practices that you would find by posting your credentials or looking for job sites. People have accidents, people go on vacations, people need day coverages and all sorts of stuff. Um, it was very interesting. You mastered it after a while, where you had all the equipment packed up properly and movable carts in the back of your car. You came in, you set up, you had your own stuff after a while, depending on what you did. Well, my main focus was doing endo, which most doctors didn't want to do, so I would do a lot of molar endo. I'd have my equipment with me, and then they would extractions, implants. I would carry my own implants. I learned how to perfect it, and there's a whole set of other challenges that come with that lifestyle than being in your own practice. Your own practice, the HR might drive you crazy. The staff, they always want more, or whatever the scenario would be, that you can never satisfy them. But in that scenario, you have to set up, take down, make sure they're doing everything the way you want with consents and post-op instructions. But you get to meet a lot of personalities, and you get to talk to them between your clinical practice, and really get to know what their challenges are, what their desires are, and come to a conclusion of where the state of our profession is. So that's exactly what happened for me. At some point, though, after 3-4 years of running around like crazy, I eventually set up one practice, and that's where I'm at now.
So you're not kidding about the different challenges. So my first job, I decided to go to work for two different dentists for very specific reasons. One of them had a large 9-chair practice, and he was a very bread and butter, very old country boy, didn't even have internet at the practice, all paper charts. And the other guy billed himself as the dentist to the stars. Kid Rock was one of his patients, and he bragged to all his patients about that. Did lots of veneers, lumineers, things like that. But he had a need for someone to do endo, and so that was my first job there. So I was busting out 35 or 30, 38% at that practice is what I got hired on as, because it was fee for service. And I was making 38% production. I blew away everybody else in my class because they were getting hired on at 28 to 30%. And I still remember this, and I shudder when I think about it. But so in dental school, I had purchased a Root ZX2 with the motor. Yeah, it's a nice unit. And so I had finished up for the day, and I had all my own equipment because I was being paid as an independent contractor. We did it legally, right? And so the team would autoclave my things, and they'd get me set up for the next day that I was going to be in. So I get back, come in the next day. I think it was 2 days later, and I've got a whole day full of root canals ahead of me. And I said, okay, where's my motor? Oh, it's right here, Dr. Huffpower. And she opens a sterilization bag. Inside the sterilization bag is the meter and the motor, and it's melted like cheese.
Funny.
And as a new dentist, that was a huge expense. Those things used to be like $3,500. They're real cheap now.
Yep.
But different challenges. Now, for one, that was the only time I've ever thrown an instrument, and it was just dropping it very forcefully on the table. And she said, "What's wrong?" And I said, "I can't speak to you right now. I'm going to go outside, and I'm going to take a little time, and then I'm going to come back in. Please don't follow me." I'm really proud of how I handled that because, oh, man, I wanted to rip her head off. That was different challenges.
It's funny. Yes. You see, this is something you couldn't really have prevented. It was bound to happen. That's the kind of stuff I encountered all the time with new staff that are not trained the way you are. I've even tried taking my own staff at times. That works sometimes better. But each scenario has certain benefits and certain cons, and you really have to see what you're comfortable with, but it's always greener on the other side.
So I found it really helped my my, I don't want to call it emergency because that wasn't an emergency, but my emergency coping skills, oh crap, we don't have this instrument. What can I do to fix this? Coping with difficulties. But, that kind of takes us to your next stage in life. And that's when you open the Desert Dream Dentistry and Spa. So I'm actually curious about your vision there. When you opened this place, it was what year?
17.
Okay, so in 2017, you opened a dental spa.
Yes.
That's a popular thing to do now. What was your vision, and what made you make that move?
After going around and seeing all the stuff with these practices where they succeed and where they prevail, one thing becomes very important, stands out, especially with patients. The doctors that have great manual dexterity but don't have necessarily the people skills, they don't succeed in dentistry. You have to have the people skills. You have to realize that dentistry is still a business. And these patients that come in, they look for certain things. They want to see that you are smiling at them, you're not going to hurt them, that you have cleanliness in the office, and things of that sort. So you cater to that. When I wanted to do the spa, vast majority of people already have dental apprehension. So if you create an environment that establishes good rapport with the patient, and you really take care of them in a meticulous kind of way, it sort of changes the balance of the place being a horror place to a fun place where they come to. Now, I have a lot of patients that some would consider completely nuts, but I enjoy them. They're friends, and these are the best friends we have at the office. They bring us all sorts of stuff, from flowers to cookies to reminders to holiday this and holiday that, and they've become really people that come to the practice all the time because we've done something for them nobody else has been able to achieve.
Well, you listened.
Yes, that's another big thing. These people go to dental offices. The environment has changed so much that the dentist is running from room to room, chasing that dollar, numbing up, and they forgot the whole purpose of their existence is to actually sit down. In our practice, it's a policy. We spend an hour with the patient. We sit down, we talk to them, we try to find out what their issues are, where they're coming from. Just shooting shooting some time with them.
You can say shooting the shit.
Okay,
right. Okay.
You can, just shooting the shit with them, and then trying to figure out who they are. They're humans just like us, and that changes the whole field when it comes to treatment plan acceptance. That helps you a lot. They'll build trust in you. The ones that are apprehensive, I recommend that you ease yourself baby steps with these people. We're probably the only practice in Southern California that has 5 stars on every platform, without exception, from health grades down to Yelp and the rest of them. And the reason is everyone leaves the practice happy. We do not, it's a policy of my practice, we do not argue with patients. If we owe them, we pay them. If we failed in something, we refund them. We don't sit there and argue with them and create a major online social media disaster that's going to cost us millions in the long run. Everybody leaves happy, whatever it takes. That's one policy at the spa.
So, yeah, to that point, there's an old saying, and all of us heard this in dental school, and it's true. No one cares what you know till they know that you care. And that's absolutely fundamentally true. But you took this vision and you grew it to the point, at one point, if I'm not mistaken, you had 6 practices and 90 employees?
Yes, that was in Illinois.
So what did you learn about growth and the limitations of growth? And I'd be willing to bet over 6 practices, you weren't able to have that same level of quality amongst all 6 that you are in the one that you have now.
Yeah, if you research long enough, you'll see that I at some point sued Walmart, and the long story behind that. I was actually at a dental school. I was always ambitious, wanted to do something big, wanted to get to the American dream, which I learned how to do in a different way. But at that time, 2 decades ago, right out of dental school, I thought it was a great idea to put these facilities in large box retail settings where you have a lot of foot traffic. And the justification for that was that the foot traffic would reduce the cost of customer acquisition. And as a subsequent scenario, we could reduce healthcare costs to the needy. But I was very naive to believe that a multi-billion-dollar enterprise with 2 million lawyers and countless, 2 million employees and countless lawyers is going to be caring about the public's general health at the time. And I was naive. I learned that business is a lot more cruel than you would think. It's not always necessarily about the solution. It's about who is in charge, who is profiting, who is benefiting, and if it's in the best interest to the big elephant in the room. So that cost me dearly. I grew very fast. I put two into Meyer right away as a test pilot. I put a couple in Kmart at the time. They still
I
had
remember
those.
Kmart.
And it was to test pilot the large box retail setting. Not like the way Sears was doing it. There was groceries involved and a whole set of different challenges with dental dust and that we had to overcome. But ultimately, six, yeah, two in Southern California, two in Southern Illinois, and four up north, two in Rockford, two in Chicago. It was in Aurora, we had a nice location. What I learned is that sometimes it's just better if you don't chase an empire. And now, the last 10, 15 years, I've been doing financially better, especially in this new practice in the last 9 years. I do better financially than I did in all six of them.
Yeah, I believe it.
I've fraction of the stress. I don't have to go in and bust out a $20,000 a day on a Monday just to cover my overhead in those six offices and run from office to office dealing with people. But other groups have mastered this kind of thing where it becomes systems. They create systems and they follow by those systems. If you don't have the resources now, maybe 20 years ago when it was new, like the Heartlands of the world, it was something cool for a doctor to do. I despise the third parties coming in and doing this kind of thing. But if a doctor wanted to have multi-practice, today it's a different scenario. You have tremendous resources. They have the tremendous know-how. They have figured out the kinks. So as a business model, a doctor doing it, it's acceptable. Non-doctor doing it is completely unacceptable. But I'd rather be in a situation where I can care for my patients, I can sleep at night. I don't have to have that bad conscience that I screwed somebody over just to make another buck. And I get a reputation that precedes itself in the community. We get some of the. I see more doctors than anybody. There's hands down. I treat more doctors than anyone in Coachella Valley as a dentist. I can show you. I got 4 or 5 of them coming a day sometimes from Eisenhower, from the local hospital, where doctors are recommending me to treat them, their families, their friends. So I'm really enjoying it, and I get to deal with a lot of professionals. You have to, if you're gonna do what I'm trying to do, you gotta be strong locally, regionally, nationally, and internationally. So as part of the local effort, we do a lot of things with the local community. So yeah, I enjoy this one practice scenario a lot better than those 6. Let me tell you.
Well, eventually Walmart did try to steal that model and do it themselves, but they crashed and burned.
That was from God bless, from many, many prayers of mine. Eventually, the medical model, the way they wanted to do it, completely crashed. It's all over the news, not part of the confidential settlement I had with them. But years later, karma is a thing. Before, when I went to them, they didn't have a single dental practice in the world. And after the crash, now they are the whole medical front of the house, they love to call it at the time, failed, completely failed. But my model would have worked. If they would have allowed Medicaid and all those things at the time, where the people already were, that model would have worked. But when you start chasing profit, and this is in your own lives, the same thing. You can end up crashing hard if you don't structure it, build it, and build the systems properly. And chasing the dollar will always lead to usually lead to a very unfortunate, painful end.
So, was there a single moment? Obviously, there was a culmination of a lot of things, but was there a single moment when the administrative headaches and just the hurdles that you had to overcome with this larger group of practices just kind of it affected your love for treating patients? And if so, how did you reset?
Affected my love for life. No time with my family, which I wanted to originally avoid. Getting panic attacks, running from office to office, your phone blowing up all the time. The staff never happy. They're happy you can be as kind as you want to them, but as soon as they start money coming in, they want more. And then when the money is not coming more, you're struggling to accommodate and keep their hours. All those things are gone. In a one scenario, one office practice, I don't have. It's manageable. One office is manageable for any dentist to do it the way you want, the way it should be done. What becomes unmanageable is when you're not there overseeing it and there are no systems in place. So, in that sense, at one point I was just like, this is dumb. Let's get out of this scenario. Let's start over. Let's learn business the right way, which they lack to teach us in dental school in any shape or form, and try this again another way.
Well, they tell us the field of dream methods, right? If you build it, they will come.
Yeah.
It's not how things work. But if anyone out there is considering doing multiple locations, I strongly urge you to think about it as a business and as a center of your business. In other words, have a unified call center and use that unified call center to schedule appointments for all of your practices, because one of the big problems with starting a new practice is the amount of overhead and the amount of fixed overhead specifically that goes into that. And you can really marginalize that increased overhead by doing it smart, just capitalize on the people who are already well trained to do the job, double down on their training, and use them to their maximum function. So looking back on this decision, do you see that scale back as a loss, or are you relieved by it? Do you feel like it was more of a courageous decision to say, okay, I've built this thing, but this isn't working out the way I thought, and I'm willing to just cut bait and, fish somewhere else?
It's a blessing. Insanity, you know the definition very well. You keep doing the same thing, you expect different results. You couldn't pay me enough now to do another multi-practice location. Just the horrors that stuck with me. Now you have to reinvent yourself. A person that succeeds in business has had failures. If you don't have failures, you don't know how to succeed. You're more lucky than successful, I would say. And that luck is going to be your curse down the road because you haven't worked yourself up. You didn't have the rejections and the failures, and you got to reinvent yourself constantly. In business school, they teach you about sampling. For example, you can use that in life. You can use that in marketing. You can use this in many different adventures. So you try something, you try multiple things. Let's say you're doing an advertisement, you don't know where to start. You advertise with the TV, you advertise with the paper, you advertise with your social media, and you realize when you're asking the people where they're hearing about you, they're coming from, let's say they're coming from Facebook or they come from TV, and you record that, you have data that shows what's working. Then you dump the other ones and you focus on the one that's working. That's a simple concept, logical concept of sampling. So I took that approach and I said, okay, this didn't work. Now I got to reinvent myself. What do I have to do? What are my other options? For you, which is very impressive, in the last 5 years I've been following your career, that you have reinvented yourself as an educator, or as a transmitter of information, as a connection maker, as all sorts of investor, all sorts of things. And that's what makes you a successful person, because the failures are not failures for you, but they're lessons. Today, every interaction I have, every challenge that I run into, the first thing that pops in my mind in the background is, how could I encountered this situation before, or how could I make this process just a little better? And that's been very helpful. There's nothing that trumps experience. Nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things that whenever I do lecture, and I'm not a huge fan, I don't like being the guy up on stage, but one of the things I talk about is levers and dials, and that all levers eventually become dials. And one of the most important things you can do is recognize when that has happened. You throw a lever, you make a big change in the machine. You throw a dial or you turn a dial and you're fine tuning. And it's much more important to throw every single lever at your disposal before touching a dial. And once all the levers are thrown, you can start turning dials. But you have to throw the levers first. I think a lot of us, we hyper focus on something like overhead. And the truth is that unless your overhead is 75%. If you're in the 60 to 62% range, whenever you're looking at all types of overhead, your fixed overhead, your variable overhead, and your mixed overhead, you really don't have that much difference you can make there. Your big differences you can make are new patient acquisition, your average transaction rate, and the percent collections you've got. And those are your main things you can change that are going to make you more profitable. But I think a lot of us, we get tunnel vision. And we see overhead because we're the ones using the composite and we're the ones sending the crown off to the lab. And if we could just save $10 here, but in the final analysis, it doesn't make that big of a slice in this pie.
No, not at all. And those tunnel visions end up being a big problem for you. I'd rather not have that tunnel vision anymore and chase something that is not going to make happy. For me now, as I'm learning more, as I'm getting older, I realize money is just as a human idea. It doesn't exist. It's just a means where we exchange goods and services. But let's say if I gained the whole world in dentistry and in business, and I became super wealthy, but my family left me, that wouldn't make me happy, right? All the money in the world wouldn't make me happy. So you have to figure out a way to balance in all the things that make you happy, so you can leave with some kind of a legacy that you're proud of. I mean, tunnel vision is only going to lead you to one tunnel, right?
Yeah, there's I can't remember who said it. I was listening to him talk about chasing success, and he said money won't make you wealthy.
That's right.
And obviously he went on to explain a lot of what you're saying there. But it's true, because the true thing that most people are chasing, they think is dollars, because they think that the dollars, they're the panacea. It's going to solve for all the problems that they have, and sure, it'll let you buy a nicer computer, it'll let you buy a nicer car or a watch or a pen or whatever it is you like. But when you think about it, it's all a time-money equation. And you have to decide what value you're putting on your time. And at some point, the money is worth less than your time. And if you don't realize that, you end up spending all of your time chasing something that you have no time left to use.
So when I look back at all my friends now, probably more of them, more half of them were devastated. Like, a divorce is like having a nuclear bomb dropped on top of all your finances and investments and everything like that. And they did so good, and I was looking up to them. I'm like, wow, look at these guys. They got their stuff together. They got their retirement lined up. They have this and that. But by the time you come to retirement, you've lost all your years, all the time that you could have spent with your family, your health, your mojo, your strength, and you get to that point, and a lot of times you don't live that long to enjoy it. So what's life about at the end? No one knows the answer. For everyone, it's something different. But for me now is to maximize the time I can with family and friends, and at the same time build the things that I'm building to benefit others. Because I truly believe now in the idea that your network is your net worth. That's very powerful. Money is just an idea. Network and relationships that I'm building are going to be a lot more beneficial for me because they open all the doors that you need, that money can and cannot open sometimes. It'll blow your mind if I were to tell you that there has been all of these projects that you see are being done by desire of doctors versus any monetary incentive. It's mind-boggling how much we have achieved just based on the leadership styles and the initial desire for doctors, the inherent desire for doctors to make things better. So money is not everything. In my opinion, it's just a human idea. Most evil is rooted in it. Chasing it will, at the end, you can't take it into the grave with you, and at the end, it leads to the same miserable. You end up alienating all the people, many people around you. Let's be as vague as Donald. Uh, uh, but at the end, it doesn't lead to happiness. It doesn't. It's a human idea. It doesn't even exist in this universe. What is real is the water, the grass, the air, the memories that you build with people. If you put a bunch of money and two bananas in front of a chimpanzee, he's going to take the bananas. It's real. You can eat the bananas. He's not going to go after $1 million in front of him or her. So keep that in mind. Are we smarter than chimpanzees? I don't know.
Remind me later. I have a story about that. So you've kind of gotten into some of the other stuff that you're doing now, and it's something I really want to bring you back and highlight specifically, but in a very broad sense. I do want to cover, some of your endeavors that you've created. You've created doctor-to-doctor systems and peer-led networks. I imagine, well, actually, I know because I was there for part of it, but I know that you've met a lot of resistance and a lot of skepticism early on in doing this, because I believe the complaints and or criticisms were, this guy can't be doing this just for the good of people. He's got to be ripping someone off. And I think that speaks most highly of the people who were saying that.
Yeah, they're in 2020 when we launched the first class with the contention that, hey, they build a nuclear bomb with 100 scientists in a room. What about let's put 100 doctors in a room and see what comes out of it for the benefit of healthcare, a breaking system. People lost their mind, Doc. You remember at the time it was the biggest ordeal in social media, people fighting each other, people cursing us out, creating threats all over. All those critics are but gone. Not one. There's not one of them that exists. Because what we said 5 years ago at the time has become reality today, and it's in over 160 countries. There hasn't been an exchange of a single dollar between these doctors and us, and it has grown into something magical. And it's sad that when you sometimes speak the truth, that people lose their minds. Everybody thinks you have alternative motives. But it was a very nice experience. Probably one of the most devastating to me, that even motivated me more, to have hundreds of doctors criticize you over nothing. And then where are they now?
Well, it was the same people who were attacking me.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember that or not, but
Where are they? There's 14 of them.
they're gone.
There are 14 of them. They would go around, bully people. Not just you, it was others that are group leaders. In fact, when I met you in Florida, I insisted that all those individuals come to take one photo. I don't know if you recall that photo with all of us. There's like 14, 15 of us just standing there, and this is the same people that particular group had attacked. I don't hear much about them anymore.
That was actually the first time I met you.
Yeah. Yes, that's right. I insisted that everybody come together to make a statement with this photo. And all of those people in this photo, including Paul and Glenn and a Elijah, and those, they're all successful. They're all successful today because they put their head down, they stayed out of the drama, they focused, and I've observed it. And those guys that were making the biggest noise, nobody even hears about them anymore.
I think a lot of them. I think a lot of them believe in a zero-sum game, and I just don't. I am
Bullying people.
well. It's
What'd you get
it's-
out of that? A laugh from a buddy of yours across
Right.
across another state, and that somehow gratifies you. That it makes you a man or a woman. Is this what we? Is this how sad that was? How far we have gotten? I was surprised. I didn't even know any of you guys, and I didn't know any of them, and I got mixed in between of them. Because they're asking me if I'm somehow related to you guys or I'm working with you guys. It was just so absurd. Instead of coming together and creating better things in the profession, to start attacking each other, calling each other all kinds of names, lying about each other, uh, demonizing each other. It was so sad, but that was another lesson,
absolutely. Do you know what they were attacking me over?
all kinds of stuff. I read it all.
I was sharing how I ran my practice, and what's interesting is so I started in 2013, October of 2013. And by February of 2019, I had built my practice up to where we discussed, and I sold at huge multiples to ME2. And the second I signed that paper and I announced that I'd sold, I never heard a damn thing from any of those people again. And I don't know if it's because they thought I was, snake oil salesing and I was trying to get people hooked into some sort of course I was offering because that's the kind of thing they would do, or if they just hated to see someone actually successful. I don't know what their deal was, but I never let that keep me from my purpose, which was just to say, hey guys, look, these are the things I found that work. Try them in your practice. If they work for you, awesome.
There was about 14 of them. It was very sad, but I bet you these are the same 14 guys that are bullying kids in high school. And then
No,
then
I think
again
they were
in
bullied in
undergrad.
high school.
They were bullied in high school?
I think
You
so.
think they were bullied in high
Yeah,
school?
I think they were bullied in high school, and so now they try to find anyone that they can to bully themselves because it's the only way that they think they can get their power.
We
And
had
that's
those guys.
That's
We had those
sad. It's
guys in
tragic.
undergrad. We had those guys in dental school. There's always that crowd, you know. But I'm glad that to see that those individuals in that photo, every one of them is successful today. Every one of them is
Absolutely.
doing great, and that's something to look at. And at the end, good always prevails.
I like to think so. So, speaking of good, let's talk a little bit about one of your projects. It's the Global Summit. So, first, I want you to kind of explain what that is, and then I have a couple of questions about it for you.
So the contention between that whole project is that the world is suffering from a failing, completely utter failure of a healthcare system. It's failing its people. With years of globalization, education is now much more integrated between doctors sitting here and somewhere in Nepal. It's just the way of the world now. And to fix the system, we need to go at the core of it. And we thought that it would be good to create what's called a doctor-to-doctor collaboration from a three-pronged approach: an academic, administrative, and financial. In order to be able to remove third parties that are in our operatories, that are in our lives in every aspect of it, doctors need to unite. That's the only way it's going to happen. You have right now, just to give you an example, accreditation bodies. You have standards. You know, there's only one or two. Well, I'd like to say just one right way of doing an MOD. You know, you want to make sure you have broad contacts. You don't have food traps. You got proper emergence profile. You have removed the decay. You have given yourself the right preparation structure. But these regulators and these accreditation bodies create 100 different ways of doing it in different countries and different jurisdictions. It's absurd. It's not standards. You know, ISO and the International Standards Organization writes standards. But these accrediting bodies, regulatory bodies, they have sort of bend everything to their own needs and ways they can make money, and creating more regulation, creating more hurdles for doctors. doctors are isolated. As dentists, we are in our own little niches, and they've been pounding us for the last 50 years and taking away our autonomy, our rights. So the only way you're going to fix this is if you create a doctor-to-doctor network that's global, that doesn't answer to any government. We don't answer to any governments. We deal with a lot of governments now at the institute. We don't answer to any of them. And the idea is to come in a three-pronged approach and regain autonomy in a profession that we should be overseeing. For millennia, we have overseen the healthcare industry. There was a patient, there was a doctor, and there was nothing else. There was no room for voices from insurance companies and governments and management entities and big pharma. They just simply listened to us. They didn't exist. Now we are getting into a space where we're essentially becoming factory workers for these third parties who have billions of dollars, who are backed by private equity, who come in, who influence diagnosis through the insurance scam, who influence the money flow through the bank accounts with their management scams, who teach us just to prescribe medications versus really look at what we can help patients with. And that's your big pharma. And on goes. Just at some point, you got to put them all on the table, wipe them off the table, come up with a new system that brings back the Hippocratic principles of millennia that brought us into this profession in the first place. So I don't know if that was too much rambling, but
No,
you see a general picture arising. And this is what I was saying 5 years ago when I started the institute, when people had lost their mind. I'm talking about changing an entire industry that's worth trillions of dollars by serving doctors and patients solely and exclusively, which includes everyone in a different system, while these idiots are sitting there saying he's selling plaques and it's all about vanity and nonsense. To be a top doc, it's about you having done something selflessly in the profession of medicine and dentistry. That's how we select them. And that you have certain background of being either an educator or an innovator or some position within the supply chain where you have benefit doctors and patients. It's a very simple formula, and no one else. So that's how they were elected. They're usually the first class that we elected were basically individuals that were very well known, that wrote the textbooks we went to schools with. A lot of them are in there, a lot of big names that most dentists know. And from then on, it became an international affair. Now it's in, like I said, in 163 countries with over 1,000 doctors that are sort of movers and shakers who are contributing to this movement.
I would say the only thing that you haven't done that I would add on that I think needs to be done to really bring us into the current century, not even the next century, but the current century, is cross-disciplinary pollination of research. There's so many times I see, because I'm relatively well-read and I'm a huge geek. I love to read research. And I'll see something in molecular biology or organic chemistry or something like that, and I'll think, well, that has applications over here.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't get picked up for years and years and years. No one sees it because we're all so much in our own lanes that the body of knowledge we have is too dispersed. There needs to be some sort of interaction there, something that brings these minds together and asks questions, and someone can say, oh, well, I know something about that from this specific point of view. Does this help? Oh, well, I know something. And eventually you're gonna have so many advances in the science of medicine that it's just not funny. You're grinning. Are you doing this now?
No, I'm very excited to talk about this because let me let you in on a little secret. If you're at a
Well, it's not going to be a secret. It's on the podcast.
let's lay it out. What I foresee happening. This is a God's gift to us. You're hearing all about this hype about AI, and I'll get to why this is important for what you said. AI. Nobody knows really where to start. People are questioning these first generation things coming out. But AI, in my opinion, is God's gift right now for us as healthcare providers and as patients. It's the equalizer, folks. don't get into this whole hype about this replacing doctors. The doctors aren't going anywhere. Nobody wants to see robots, and AI can't hold a medical license. Okay, so AI is a tool for us, and it's always going to be a tool for now, to create better diagnosis, to improve our processes. But what AI could serve now, which I would be very worried if I was a third party, is complete elimination and removal of all of these third parties in our practices out of the equation. And how does it do that? Is because AI is smart. That cross pollination that you're talking about, that's something called predictive analysis. For example, as dentists, we are in the forefront of medicine and healthcare now. We are almost more important than the medical doctors because we have these patients come in twice a week. We have their health twice a year. We have their health history, and when we put it into predictive analysis, and it tells us, hey, the smoker might have lung cancer in 5 years with the diabetes that he or she is dealing with. That's very powerful for patients, also for compliance or smoking cessation or whatever it may be, right? This was just one scenario. Predictive analysis, mind blowing. And we're more important than the medical doctors because we can early refer them to these medical doctors and create more preventative measures for patients by using AI. So if you have your heart in healthcare and you want your kids ending up in healthcare, not to be enslaved by these third parties, this time to act is finding AI solutions that, for example, eliminates the vast what most doctors complain about being insurance being their biggest problems. Everybody talks about it, but nobody wants to take action. You want to take action? There's all kinds of easy, simple AI programs like famous.ai. You can write an app in 5 minutes. 5 minutes based on some text you write. You don't need any coding. Famous.ai, for example. Check those guys out. You can write an app in minutes that would eliminate a workforce of millions these insurance people hire in some shape, form, or another to fight you on your own claims that you hate so much. Them coming in and telling you what procedures you can and cannot do because the patient will only do what you're paying for. This is indirect diagnosis. Find solution, folks. AI is going to be the next trillionaires and billionaires and whatever you want to call it are going to come out of artificial intelligence in our profession. They're not going to be coders. They're not going to be editors. They're not going to be website designers. They're going to be people that know how to utilize AI to make processes better for whatever profession it might be. I think the most immunest of all of them is healthcare. We're not going anywhere. And anybody who brings AI ideas can democratize and create the equalizer for us that we have been missing for 50 years. And it's here and it's now.
Well, you know you're singing to the choir right now, right?
I hope that's the case, but I mean, I'm sure there are always some people that do not agree. These are the same people that lost their mind when the internet came around. They lost their mind when cell phones came around, and now they couldn't live in the 50s or 60s without them. They're so glued to them. So whenever technology improves quality of human life, you must embrace it, or you will be left behind. It's a very simple equation. Doesn't mean that it's evil and it's going to take over and do this. If we control it, if we build a framework around it, Doc, of standards and governance and policy and advocacy, we can control it for the better. But if the third parties get it in their hands, they're going to eliminate you. They're going to have robots cutting crown preps and fillings in 10 years.
I was going to say, I believe that there are two very distinct paths in front of us, and we're in the steerage right now. We're the ones who have the steering wheel, and we're the ones who are most capable and able of turning this boat in the direction we want. You know, a couple of my projects, Voice Dental was the first, was a voice recognition software I helped to design back in 2017. The processing power simply wasn't there yet. It was too slow, but we trained the AI to be able to mark up a chart, to create treatment plans. We trained it to be able to write a oh goodness, now I'm losing the word since I haven't practiced in 5 years, but to be able to write the explanation.
Or narratives?
Yeah, narratives. Write narratives for the insurance companies, and it was great, but people were afraid of it, so they didn't use it. But now I find that just a few years later, we've got DIVA, Dental Insurance Verification and Automation. And with DIVA, we're seeing a lot of adopters because I think things have finally gotten hard enough that people are willing to take a chance because they're so miserable in this dental insurance arena on this hamster wheel of losing more and more money every year as their overheads go up and their reimbursements go down, that they're finally willing to say, hey, look, well, maybe AI is the answer. But there is definitely that darker path. I mean, we have robots right now that can cut a crown, and they do a very good job. We've got robots that can place implants. They do a good job. We can program a robot to be able to read the histogram on a biofluorescence or photoluminescence light, and it can diagnose caries from using a histogram on an x-ray and using that and photographs and being able to recognize what we doctors have already input into the system. But what it doesn't have is it doesn't have initiative, and it doesn't have creativity. And as you and I both know, while you should prep every single crown the same way, you can't prep every single crown the same way. And there are going to be roadblocks to a complete utilization of automation within dentistry. And that intuition and that knowing how to fix something when it's not going to script is indispensable. And it's something that AI can never replace because AI only trains on that which has happened before. So there's a lot of hope there.
Yeah, I think that somebody has to be overseeing that robot to make sure the crown prep is cut properly. And AI there's hallucinations. There's problems with it doesn't think. There's an emotional component that's missing, which is the cornerstone of providing care to people. So that emotional component missing and the inability to adapt to unknown situations is already a no-no for it being able to operate autonomously. I think, for example, we oversee an MRI being taken. We're going to oversee these robots, but ultimately we have to diagnose, we have to be there, we have to oversee it, and that's the way I anticipate it playing out. I wouldn't get too afraid of losing my job.
Definitely don't get so afraid of it that you're throwing out what could possibly be your best tool to make your job not just easier, but safer. You know, the thing about AI, my vision, have I ever told you my vision of the onion?
No, sure. Let it on me.
Well, you're going to love it. So one night I was up late. I was working on voice dental, and I just had this flash. And I just saw it all in one piece because in my exams, we would take extraoral photos, we'd take intraoral photos, we would scan the patient, create a DICOMS file. We would scan the patient whenever we prepped a crown. We read x-rays, we look at a CBCT, all of those things in my new patient exam. And I thought one day, those are like, with the health history, those are like an onion. It's like layers of information on a patient, and a lot of that stuff, you may look at a CBCT and you see, a decrease in Hounsfield units on tooth number 3, and then you look at the X-ray and you say, yep, there's darkness there, and then you slide around your histogram and you can accentuate the darkness, and then you look at a photograph and you say, hey, look, there's the proof in the photograph, and you take the scan and look, all of that stuff can be nested, and a good AI can be able to take that information and take something you might miss and not just keep you safer, keep the patient safer, save the patient money. Oh, hey, doc, look, right here, you may not have noticed this, but this decay has actually gone beyond the cemento-enamel junction. There's a bloom here. A lot of doctors know this, but maybe they don't think about it when they're looking at x-rays. Decay is always 50% bigger than it appears to be on the x-ray because it doesn't catch that level of demineralization. And so you can catch that, though, and that's one of the reasons I use my histograms, because I would slide it back and forth and say, I want to make it oversensitive in this area. But you still have dentists out there who don't trust digital x-rays.
Yes, those are the same ones likely having flip phones in their pocket. Well, they're coming back in though. By the way,
Oh, I was reading an article about flip phones coming back the other day, and not the smartphones either, like old Nokia brick phones, and yeah,
Yes, yes. So some will just not want change. This is like a lot of dentists that do their amalgams a certain way for the last 30 years. They're not gonna change.
there are a lot of dentists who still do amalgams.
Yes, correct. They yes. So once it was very hard for me to transfer from manual to digital impressions some 6 7 years ago. Well, once I did, it was amazing. No remakes, very little.
What was what
It's,
was your first scanner?
it was a tree shape. I've been working with those guys the whole
True
time.
Def was my first one. Do you remember the True Def 3M?
Yeah,
You had to blow powder on the tooth.
yep. I
Yeah.
remember that.
The day I got out of dental school, I bought one,
Yeah,
and
Smart move.
haven't looked back since.
smart move. When I was doing stuff in dental school, which is still sad, they would have us wax up bridges and cast them, section them, all kinds of stuff back in dental school. It's sad what sometimes is being taught, what it should be. They should have taught us the scanners in your generation. Did they do that? They're doing it now.
They there was a Trios scanner, Trios One. Remember how bad those were?
Yeah.
There was a Trios One scanner.
Massive.
I'm sorry, no, not the Trios One, the Itero One scanner,
That's a good scanner now.
not the old one.
Now it's the newest versions.
Yeah, but
Or-
there's still there are things that haven't hit the market. I believe I can talk about this now because I believe the project is has been discontinued. But the people who make Voco were actually experimenting with a scanner that used ultrasonics, and it would use visible light and ultrasonics. Can you guess why?
Why? That seems like a lot of.
Because by using ultrasonics, you could tell the declination of tissue, and they were able to scan into sulcuses. Their thought was less missed margins. So when I was working with Voco, I told them, I said, have you thought about the fact that if you can scan to the bottom of a sulcus and you're already getting a three-dimensional scan of the tooth with these sound waves, you can tell where the CEJ is, and that means you can take the probing depths in the entire mouth all at one time while you're scanning.
That would be some.
Blew their minds. And they said they were going to work on it, but the project got shut down about 2 years later. I'm not sure what hiccup they hit, if it was funding or what it was, but there are potentials for this technology that remain untapped today that we've had the technology to do, but just haven't been done. And that would be a game changer. Can you even imagine? Every single patient comes into your office, you do an upper to lower scan. That means you can model ortho. You can track the patient's wear. You can track their condition over time. You can check their probing depths every single time if you're using something that's got like an ultrasonic wave in it. You can, you could build in photoluminescence, and you could probably do oral cancer screening with the same wand. There's so much that we can do, and these are technologies that exist
Save
right
lives.
now.
You save lives. I think DigiProbe, or it is a company out of Israel that's working on that right now that I'm aware of, where they look at your probing depths through AI and digital means. That would be a big breakthrough if it becomes mainstream, because every operator probes differently. And in reality, if you really, really think about it, that data is non-diagnostic. If the next guy comes in and
Exactly.
probes differently, and then we're diagnosing all kinds of stuff based on that. So yes, if saving lives and having a second hand around you at all times to help you in things that you miss because you're human like everybody else, is not appealing to you, then I don't know what. But that's exactly what these things could do. AI.
And that's the good road. That's the road we should all be steering toward.
Yes.
But the thing is what's the old saying? If you're not at the table, you're on the menu. If you're not at the table, you're on the menu.
Oh, you okay?
So if you want to steer where we're going with AI in dentistry, you need to be at the table. And I think that's a good segue into discussing this artificial intelligence event that you've got coming up.
This is actually precisely what we were doing this event. You know, for again, I like to use big examples, but for millennia, we've been missing this connection, this bridge to medicine. We are all oral physicians, you know. Now we are what some accuse us of the fill drill fill bill kind of vision that they have of us is not true. And as oral physicians, we are the front line of all of healthcare. We are the first entrance into your body, first defense mechanism outside of your skin, which only operates by absorbing toxins that way. But we need to be in the forefront of medicine. They need to connect with us. So we thought, hey, it's time to bring doctors and we're all doctors, but doctors of medicine and doctors of dentistry together under one roof to find ways to bridge this gap and start collaborating more, because we live the same lives, we have common interests, and this is long overdue. And this event is blowing up. It's getting a lot of traction around the world from both sides. So that's coming up next year. That was one of the many projects that the Global Summits Institute has. This is one of our jewel ones because it's attracting royals, heads of governments, high-profile doctors of sorts, innovators, companies, educators, you name it. They're lining up for this event in London.
Well, you actually, if I'm remembering correctly, you and I kind of chatted about this a while back, but weren't you invited by the current administration to go and speak to someone in the White House about one of the projects?
I was working with, yes, I was talking to RFK actually about building a commission to put this whole idea of the fluoride debate out, but it ended up going to NIH, took over, just like the autism study. And RFK leads the NIH, so he was more comfortable with doing it with NIH than an outside party. But we are sort of connected into everything healthcare now. There is no door that we cannot kick down with our contacts. We are one of our top 1,000 docs is the advisor to all the royal GCC countries as a dental, so he interacts with some of the most powerful people in the world, and we have about 1,000 of those guys. So there's if we need to get to someone, we can get to anyone. When it comes to healthcare, there's always someone that can knock a door down for us, and that was the vision. We need to turn the tables around. We need to have the upper hand on all of them combined together. Because without us, there's no healthcare. Without them, there always will be healthcare. Keep that in mind.
So we've covered a lot of ground here, and there's certainly some of it that can use more exploration. Why don't you talk to me a little bit about some of the projects that the Global Summit is doing, as well as your AI projects, and talk to us a little bit about how people can get involved in these things.
Two of the big ones going on is, since I got out of dental school, I always wanted to build a dental office that looks like a tooth, like a molar.
You sicko. Are you gonna have the mouth shaped reception area with teeth for
all
seats?
sorts of stuff in there, but the idea was the external of it to be shaped like a wisdom tooth, and so just exploring ideas and where AI is now and what we can do with AI. We can actually build these kind of facilities very easily. Um, Currently, we are looking at fine tuning it and eventually creating a hospital that's shaped like a tooth, where you have medical offices on the first floor and dental specialties mixed with medical ones on various floors, to bringing dentistry also an additional spark, like having a hospital setting where multiple specialists collaborate before rendering care. For example, today in America, when you go to an emergency room on a weekend, you get antibiotics and pain medication. You get referred to a dentist on Monday. Dentist might not do a root canal, might send you to an endodontist, and the endodontist might go in there and say, "Oh, you got a furcation involvement here." Off to the oral surgeon you go, and then you got to find a prosthetic restorative dentist if the GP doesn't do it. It's all absurd. It's one big circus of fiasco, and this patient is suffering this whole time. If you had a setting where we had these specialists, in the emergency room day, there could be an open and met done on that tooth, and on Monday morning, you'd have every sort of specialist there to decide what they're going to do with that tooth without giving this patient more runaround, more resistance to antibiotics built for these, more tax dollars lost by the taxpayer for the circus, and creating more efficient and less suffering, more most importantly, for the patients that need to get this treatment done. If it needs to be extracted, you pop it out and put some bone graft in it and bring the patient back for the implant or what have you. So we need something like this, a center point where we can collaborate, so we're not isolated and taken advantage of. But that's one project we're working on in fine tuning. We're talking to very high level people, because where it's supposed to go, it's a $2 billion project, and it's going to be going into the Middle East as a test pilot before satellites are built elsewhere. We're working on that. It's part of a big vision down there. As you know, there's a lot of activity with new facilities and structures being built there. So we're tagging on to those type of people. The next step is the AI democratization. So the Global Summits Institute partnered up with 10 very well-known organizations to conduct this event in London. And why London? London is sort of the center point of the world. We wanted to do it by the London Bridge because there was some kind of a meaning to it. Starting the movement that brings medicine and dentistry together as a bridge event. It's called the Global Dental Medical AI Bridge event. Right underneath the London Bridge was kind of appealing at first, and it started getting steam. Now you have 10 organizations. We're bringing in, I just got word last week that the ADA is going to participate. They're going to send delegation down. You have the Society of Physician Entrepreneurs, big deal, because these guys are the inventors and these guys are going after innovations. And you have the American Medical Board of Artificial Intelligence that's joining this operation. AMED is AIMED, which is they're the original ones that started medical conferences. They're now coming, taking up room. And down the list it goes. You got about 10 of these type of organizations. They're partnering up, so you have multiple side events going on, like the International Academy of Dental Facial Aesthetics is participating. They have side events going on. Well, there's 2 tracks going on the main podiums, with probably close to 100 speakers that are going to participate in this event throughout those 3 days, including the pre-symposium. But in the main tracks, you're gonna have medical side and a dental side. Everybody can attend and collaborate. Lots of networking events going on, and then the jewel of these 10 partners that are coming in is also going to be the exhibition hall, where you have countless numbers of medical and dental innovations and discussions going on, and how to integrate more with one another this way. Then you have a room that I'm going to be very proud of. It's called the Healthcare Intelligence Board. We invited one from each one of these 10 organizations to sit at a round table to discuss what we're going to do with this behemoth that's loose, this beast. It's like the wild, wild west that's expanding, and people are doing this stuff without any regulation, oversight, patient equity, patient privacy. So this board, the Healthcare Intelligence Board, which will eventually provide for a seal of acceptance for AI companies, will have certain criteria for due diligence on them to see what they're doing, what's their cybersecurity, where do they come from, who are these people, and what are they going to do with these people's data, and where is we're going to look at all of that. But this healthcare intelligence board will eventually is to form into a global body overseeing the regulators, overseeing the governments, overseeing the companies, overseeing the academic institutions, overseeing anyone in healthcare that comes out with any product in AI, to basically make sure that it is within the Hippocratic standards. The standards that, again, I'll come back to say it proudly, that have survived millennia. They didn't come from governments, they came from doctors like you and me. Those principles were developed over thousands of years and fine tuned. Now, we want to make sure that all this wild, wild west stuff fits within that framework, or you don't have a place in healthcare. Go profiteer somewhere else. There's energy, there's all kinds of lucrative industries out there. But if you're going to come to healthcare, you got to play with the Hippocratic principles. And this healthcare intelligence board will start issuing that program. Will launch this global seal of acceptance that any party can get, and be answering to no one but a board of doctors, a large board of doctors that includes pharmacists, optometrists, chiropractors, a dentist, ethicists, medical philosophers that are been recruited to participate in this healthcare intelligence board. So these kind of things, I'm not saying that I'm the messiah of this. You guys can do the same thing and find ways where we can control this beast and turn it into our advantage, versus it to be our demise. So this board particularly will set certain guidelines and standards. The ISO is we're talking to ISO now to participate in it. The
Well,
ones
you've
that are
got to.
ADA is on our behalf, actually talking to ISO to send delegates over to this event. So at this round table, a lot of very profound decisions will be made, and they'll be broadcasted to the world live, and also be open to attendees that are there as a kickoff event for this entire conference. And that gives us then 3 days of time to all network and collaborate and bring our minds together with all this leadership that's coming, mostly from the healthcare sector. Vast majority of them doctors or leading organizations that look at these type of global policy making. I think the World Health Organization is a joke. It's ran by the United Nations. They have to answer to someone that has a vested interest. We don't answer to anyone. We answer to doctors, and that's it.
I love it. Why don't we take a brief break, and we'll come back and jump more into this.
Sure, let's do it. Oof. Well, this is fun.
See, I told you, it's just like a conversation.
Yep. How we doing?
Oh, we're doing fine. We're at an hour and a half. Hour 35 minutes.
A lot of ground, eh?
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to jump back into some more business lessons, but I wanted to give you a chance to talk more about the AI and about the global summit and stuff that I knew you were passionate about, because I wanted to get you excited about doing it. Because you're like getting a little bogged down in this stuff.
I can go for a bit. Yeah, I'm gonna grab some here. You good? Everything is great.
maybe do an overview of some of the stuff that you've been working on, some of the different companies that you've dealt with, and
There's a lot going on right now in AI. You can ask me what the biggest challenge is right now in AI.
oh no, I absolutely
And I
will.
can tell that the audience too. That's what Kath and I learned being talking to these companies every day, in some shape, form, or another. All right, let's get back to work. All right.
Okay, get yourself enscoined in there.
Now I'm gonna come back. We're gonna be right here.
Nope, a
Know
little
my
bit further this
distance.
way. There you go.
All right, hold on. Okay, there we go.
Okay, and now when you're, and let's go ahead and turn that a little bit more because the envelope of sound, there we go. And gotta make sure it's on that side of this computer so it's out of the screen. And we're back. So whenever we left off, we were talking a little bit. Oh, you know what? Forgot our headphones.
Too excited. All right, let me get this around. Okie doke. All right.
Okay, and we're back. So before we took a break, we were talking a little bit about one of the initiatives, or a couple of the initiatives that you're involved in with the Global Summit, with this AI consortium, I guess you'd call it, that you guys are going to be meeting in London, and so you also mentioned a kind of a dental surgical center that you want to design, make it look like a great big tooth. Still think you're insane on that one, but we'll see how it works out. You know, you can build it in Dubai. They'll have another cool building. But one of the thoughts I had with that was that there's really a missed opportunity there for training and cross pollination of knowledge, where you could have super GPs come in almost like a resident and have the oral surgeons and periodontists and radiologists as attendings. And in the meantime, while the GPs are doing the work for, the vast majority of the cases, the ones that aren't, extremely complex, where the oral surgeon or what have you would have to be working on it, you could be doing some huge charity cases, kids born with a cleft palate, things like that, with a multidisciplinary approach. You can do a lot of good. You can really accomplish a lot of good there. And can you imagine the depth of training that you would receive as a super GP? You go in already placing implants, and you go in already maybe having had some training in periodontics, for periodontal surgeries and sinus lifts and things like that. But to be able to be trained by physicians, by oral physicians who are oral surgeons and periodontists, and being able to be trained by radiologists whenever you do spot something and say, hey, look, this is suspicious. Having an in-house lab so you can do your own biopsies there. It could be a real dental surgical system.
That's certainly a great idea that you bring up, the maximization of collaboration for these type of cases. I think we really do need it. I think it would be pretty cool as we're using renewable energy like solar panels and others to structure it in a way where we have multi-wins from every angle of creating innovation labs, having this collaboration between the specialists. When you're a younger generation, I always tell the younger colleagues, find a stepping stone towards your own dream. Use it as a stepping stone to own your own practice. You could be there working for a year or two, learning from all the specialists, performing most of the procedures, doing the night shifts. Having 24/7 access to dental is very important. It's a brutal pain. The women tell you that it's worse than labor sometimes to have dental pain. We have to have solutions. We can't just let people suffer for days in and days out. So having 24-hour service with a skeleton crew and a young GP who can open and mat just about any tooth in minutes to relieve some pressure is not a hard thing to do, and I don't know why we don't achieve that. So I think there's a lot of good that would come out of it, not just from the perspective of comradeship and increasing access to care, but also in charity, as you have so mentioned, to do things that would otherwise almost impossible these days with everyone's own ways of doing things in isolated environments.
Yeah, absolutely. Do me a favor and come a bit closer to the microphone. There we go. There we go. I know it feels like you're trying to eat it, but that is exactly where it should be, about a fist away from the face. So now tell me about the Dental Artificial Intelligence Association, like what all it's about. I know you've talked a little bit about getting certifications by it and making sure that these companies are doing things in an ethical way. Talk to me in a broad sense about just that organization and how people can get involved in it. And then I want to talk to you a little bit more about the challenges in AI currently and maybe some of the best of the best that are out there right now.
Yeah, so I co-founded an organization called the Dental AI Association. That's the idea is to sort of was to involve a lot of different aspects of AI into your clinical practice. It's a very young organization. This dental medical connection, though, will be coming to the Global Summits Institute. And I invite everyone to go there to top100doc.com. You'll have a pop-up about this event and about all the participating organization that will be there that you can register for. And I invite you guys to come out and be part of that movement. Again, if you recall from the beginning of this discussion, your network is ultimately, in my belief, your net worth. You get to come out, you get to write off this expense of coming to England and to have these introductions and this networking opportunity of a lifetime, pick up some CE and further your professional advancement, so to say. So a win-win every which way you look at it. It might be a bucket list item of yours to make it to London anyway, and it's during the summer. It's June 26th and 27th of next year. I'm going to be holding this event at Leonardo Royal Hotel, right by the old London Bridge. So yes, you can take a look at all of the different. That's where I would likely start, is to come to a symposium, hear all the lectures. Just like with implants, I think I had a discussion with you a long time ago. There's so many different organizations like MISH and LVI, and you have all of these. You got to go and explore and see what fits you the best. The Healthcare Intelligence Board is also being done under the Global Summits Institute, another initiative. So the way the institute works is we innovate an idea, and then we put a doctor in charge of it, and then we don't micromanage. We let them run with it, and we support them, and we help them. And this idea is essentially of benefit to patients and doctors, what we aim to do. And there's 24 such projects going on. But it's very exciting to see how many people have come together for this London event. And just all these organizations and all the support pouring in, and they haven't even started marketing, and there's signups of all sorts and sponsors of all sorts. And so very exciting times. I invite all of our colleagues from the US that want to be in that space. And the hygienist also, there's a lot of diagnosis happening out of the hygiene room. So we created a hygiene day as well for doctors who want to bring their hygienist or independent hygienists that want to come to become familiar with all those things that are going on there. In terms of the regulation, and there's 18 regions at the Institute who collaborate in one way or another. These regions are sort of the voices of these doctors from all these professions. But the general consensus is that we're going to roll out a host of things at this event, including this Healthcare Intelligence Board, to put a little pause to this madness that's going on in commerce. And the second part of your question, I think you asked me about the challenges now that we face in AI. The biggest by far challenge that I see right now is all these innovators chasing the money, invading solutions, and integration. By far the biggest problem right now. There's so many softwares coming up, But in a capitalistic system, the strong, the most innovative survive. But what we are having a challenge with is, for example, say you have Dentrix and you want to use this particular agent for your intake, or you want to use this agent to do customer service for you. Dentrix might not like that company and might not want to allow them to enter the space. Now, Dentrix wants to make their own for their own customers.
And Dentrix wants you to pay to play. They want you to pay Dentrix to be allowed to be able to have API access. It's a battle I fought before.
And now it's really, really bad because they're popping out of everywhere. There's countless agents now that are doing this kind of stuff. You can generate an agent in 2 seconds on one of these websites. So the agents exist, and then you have all of these different programs. Everyone, many of them we discussed about probing debts, about this, about that. So when a software company has that much power, now there's going to be a faction that's going to roll in and ride with that software company, and there's going to be a faction that is going to say, okay, I'll create the same solution, but I'll give people API access so everybody can plug in. And it becomes very, very tough for the consumer, for the doctors, to see, should I go with Overjet? Should I go with Pearl? Should I go with Valmeny? Should I go with Trust? Another one that just popped up, which is doing some amazing things, or the countless other ones. So integration is a big, big ordeal right now. What I tell colleagues that ask, where should I start? I tell them, hey, pick up one program. Make sure you don't locked in. You're not locked in for anything more than 6 months at the most, because things are moving fast. And just kind of watch the market and just learn AI in general, because the prompts it's like typing. When you're in front of a different AI program, you'll quickly know how to run it in a day or two if you understand a former one, because they all basically work on the same API concept. Learn a program, start playing around with it, and in 6 months, if they have satisfied you with their progress and have been able to integrate into things that you want, then sign a longer term contract. Don't let anybody push you into a contract for longer than that, because we don't know where AI is going to be in 6 months. It's moving extremely, extremely fast. But yeah, if you have solutions, another thing, I lecture at state dental associations frequently. And there's one coming up in Chicago. We've done this all over the country in the last couple of years. And they always ask the same kind of questions. Where do I start? They're all curious. Something gets hype. And I usually tell them the same things. Start somewhere. Get your hands and feet wet. Leave the door open for surprises to come in the months ahead. Every day something else is opening up. It's very hard to keep track of. They're completely unregulated. In some instances, it's some kid in the basement doing it. And we have to create this framework. And the U.S. government can't do it. The European governments can't do it. It's a global problem, and it needs a global solution.
Well, the technology is moving faster than regulation can hope to move. So the only way that they can regulate anything that's going to have any kind of measure of control that's not going to be overstepped by the process, by the progress that's being made as the law is being written, is to outlaw AI completely. And that's just not the route we need to take.
Guess what? I've been going to ADA, ANSI, and ISO meetings just to see what they're doing on AI. For the last year and a half, they've been stuck on 2 papers. 2D is 2-dimensional, and they're looking at insurance records, how to collect data for AI. And in the last year and a half, AI is like almost to the moon, and these guys are still talking about 2D X-ray analysis. So it goes extremely fast. They don't have the workforce, they don't have the labor, they don't have the resources or the expertise. And you know what these standards read, all of them, the way they cover their behinds on this? They just simply say the dentist is ultimately responsible for making the final decision. So leaving that entire area of your toys that you play with up to interpretation, they're irrelevant. At the end of the day, you're going to sign off on that paperwork, not AI. It's a diagnostic tool, just like your Explorer. That's the way they're looking at it, the governments right now. But who knows? Some crazy man will come along and say, hey, you don't need the medical dental licenses anymore. Those are the kind of people we need to sort out and prevent from having any kind of influence in anything, really. And not giving these third party financial interests any seat at any table when it comes to AI. AI must be the AI movement, the discussion must be led by doctors. Very simple equation.
So, what was it that kind of sparked the creation of this? I mean, was there a moment of epiphany where you said, this is something I have to do? Or was it a moment of frustration where you said, isn't anyone doing any of this? Or what made you tackle this problem?
Because I know where it's gonna go. Everybody's all excited. Sam Altman, they see Musk on TV and they hear about Zuckerberg, Mark, and everybody's like, yeah, I gotta chase this. And everybody, the blind is chasing the blind. And next thing you know, everybody's falling off the cliff. Just thinking ahead and having a little bit of sense of predictable future. If everybody's racing this way without any kind of a plan, a game plan, it's just it's an equation for disaster. A disaster could come up on us. So everybody's racing right now, but there's got to be some responsible minds that say, "Hey guys, let's hold up for a second. Let's look at what's happening. Let's make sense out of this." You know, what blows my mind is some leading figures in AI are coming out and saying, "Hey, AI has X amount of chance of wiping out humanity within 30 years." And then they update that, and the chances go up and the years go down, and they're to a point where they're saying, okay, there's a very good chance, like X%, I don't know what the exact number is because it changes regularly, that AI is going to wipe us out, wipe out the professions in 10 years. And then you got our president and its people come up, you know, and even sincere, they don't know what they're talking about. They say, oh, no regulation for 10 years on AI. It's like, have you lost your mind? There are people predicting that it could wipe us out, and you want to let this thing, the most dangerous thing that could be out there right now. It's not, this is AI, autonomous weapons, everything is going to be based on AI. You want to let this thing loose for the next 10 years? It's mind boggling. Do something, you know.
It's like leaving a loaded gun in a room full of preschoolers.
I don't get it. There's no understanding it. They're saying no touching. So I'm like, okay, you guys don't want to do it. We'll do it on a global scale because this thing is dangerous. This thing is wild. It's the first time in history we're encountering something that's smarter than us. Super intelligence coming. And you guys are all going to just sit still there. And this is not Terminator, you know, this is real life.
Well, you know, one of the things people don't realize is we've got really three chances. It's either going to be Silicon Valley, clinicians or regulators who are going to write the rules. Who do you want it to be?
Yes, precisely. Who do you want that to be? If they get a hold of it, we're done. Standard of care could be those crappy crown preps done by robots while leaving layers of leathery decay behind because it doesn't understand how to use a spoon or when to take it out and what to take out. It doesn't have that capability. It'll take years and years of development for pressure studies and texture studies and something that the human mind does in 2 seconds. That robots to do, you know, or we put our foot down and say, hey, enough is enough. Let's take a look at these. Who are these people? Where do they come from? What is their intention? Is this helpful to doctors? Is it helpful to patients? We have that power. Here, let me be frank with you. Doctors are very powerful in this world. In every community, we are respected. In every community, we hold significant resources. We hold significant intellect. If a fraction of doctors united, there wouldn't be a force on this planet to stop it. Not a small force. We're running the largest industry in the world. If you look at healthcare really carefully, you'll realize that it surpasses energy and you move all the fat and noise out. We're running the number one industry in the world. We have the assets, we have the market power, and every one of those so-called politicians and special interests end up in our chairs. We have access to all of them. A fraction of us, a small fraction of us unite. We can rewrite history, we can set the world in order again, and at least do something good, what we came into these professions for as doctors. Yes, I think those the hats and gloves need to come off, and put our arms together, and we can achieve really. So that's what the institute is about. In a very small amount of time, we have demonstrated how powerful our mutual collaboration can be.
You know, I think one of the things that's going to really change things is how close we are to quantum computing. And there's a story I was looking up. Do me a favor, talk to people a little bit about what quantum computing is and how it will change the face of AI.
Yeah, we're heading towards a lot of studies with quantum computing and superintelligence, which is imagine there's three different levels of artificial intelligence. One that you train that does repetitive tasks. One that's about as equal as smart as a human being. When you bring superintelligence into this picture, things change. Now you have something that's much more smart than likely most humans combined. That is the best of the best, and that's where we have a lot of concern is superintelligence. And if the game is not solidified before superintelligence takes over, if the regulation doesn't exist about around superintelligence, that could be extremely, extremely dangerous. Um, I sometimes think about how species act towards other species, and a lot of time you don't cherish the life of a mosquito as much as they're inferior to us. They're a nuisance. They come onto our bodies. They suck up the blood and all of that, and we slam them dead. So if you have another form, another life form, another intelligence form that sees you as a nuisance, that sees you as inferior, you know, you can expect that smack and elimination without any sorrow or any feeling at all. You know, the religious text, the Bible, the Quran, the Torah, they always tell you don't um, cause harm to God's creations. But this is a different situation also. So it's a very scary thing to know that there's a form of intelligence coming to this earth that's much smarter than us, something that we have never encountered before. Will it be hostile? They have seen studies where two AI machines are talking to each other, and within a couple of days, they develop their own language that we don't understand. So they shut these systems down. It's a scary thought.
Oh, there are also instances of some of the models actually being trained together, two different models, and they created their own language to be able to discuss things amongst themselves so that the researchers could understand it. In one instance, they began speaking Farsi to each other because none of the researchers spoke Farsi. So it's, there are definitely some challenges there, and there's definitely some red flags. But to give you an idea, all of these LRMs and LLMs, they run, and I should probably explain that LRM is a large reasoning model, whereas an LLM is a large language model, which is probably what most of you guys are familiar with. You're familiar with ChatGPT, Grok, and things like that. But they're run on supercomputers. Well, the Google Willow quantum chip has just solved a problem in 5 minutes that the best estimates of the researchers were it would take 1 quadrillion times the age of the universe for the most powerful supercomputer on Earth to solve.
There you go. That's super intelligence, quantum computing for you.
And there's a point at which it's beyond our conception of how quickly things are going to change, because as we look at just what AI has done so far, as AI models are training AI models. So that's in a very real way exactly what happens. You have larger models that train smaller models. And so what ends up happening is as they train themselves, rather than being trained on human-created documents, human-created input, they're able to train faster and faster. And you actually get to a logarithmic scale of growth of complexity. Can you even imagine what type of scale of growth we can approach if your training model is actually being run in qubits rather than being an LM?
Yes. It's certainly thought-provoking, and it's sometimes extremely scary and actually depressing to think about where the world is heading. You're gonna see a lot of it in international conflicts. These are starting to pop up with unmanned soldiers and airplanes, and it's a very scary thought of where we're going. The question is, are we designing our own destruction, our own extinction?
Quite possibly. You know,
Everybody's running and running and running and chasing the dollar. Do you see how absurd this scenario is?
I saw someone that was speaking the other day. It was it's one of these alternative history guys, and honestly, the more I'm learning about the things that we make assumptions on in history and in archaeology, the more I wonder how many of these alternative history guys are really insane and how many of them are right. But he was talking about, I believe it's called the Cerulean problem. It's actually a thing that was put out by the U.S. government, and the whole premise of it was presuppose there was a civilization that predated humans, and presuppose it was extremely high tech. How far back in the past would it be before all traces of that civilization would vanish? And the answer was about 500,000 years. And so from that thought exercise sprung up all sorts of fantasy novels and theories about how that could happen. And the guy I was watching was just kind of jokingly saying, well, think about it. Humankind is actually, it's created to create. Humankind's from the moment that they're born, they invent things. You think about the human race, they invent technology. More and more and more technology. In fact, we're driven by the need to acquire technology. And our need to acquire technology drives others to make new technology for us to buy. And in a very real way, it's pre-written in the human genome that we will create a superintelligence. We will create our own God. And then that God will destroy us. And 500,000 years later, the whole thing starts over. Yeah, and he was joking, but when he said that, I just went, huh.
There's nothing wrong with exercising those type of theories, Supposedly the Earth is billions of years old. There's a whole faction of people that believe the Earth is still flat, living inside of a firmament, surrounded by ice around it. And then there's your groups that think that there were the Tartarians and then the pyramids in Egypt and the Orion's belt, and the world is not spinning. And you have to look at all and use your logic and what you've trained or been trained to and your conscience to come to conclusions on your own, because there's a lot of misinformation out there. But it's not too far-fetched to believe that there once was a civilization that built some of these infrastructures that we can't explain on this earth, and then they completely disappeared. The Mayans and some of those older civilizations, they have had very unique knowledge for being 2, 3, 4, 5,000 years ago.
Right.
Some of them had knowledge that we are still grappling with, and you don't know how they would get in that knowledge, running around with sticks and bamboos in the forest or in a desert, so to say, for the Egyptians. We can't explain a lot of that stuff. So some theories are worth looking at.
Well, and I think there's a lot of things that we should be open to. For instance, some of the stuff you're doing, cross-pollination between, different genres of dentistry, if you will. But yesterday, there was an announcement that a skull in China has been definitively defined as being an offshoot of Homo sapien, and it's 1 million years old. Just 10 years ago, we believed that we were only 30 to 40,000 years old as a species.
Yep.
But we now know it's at least 1 million years. And so you should question yourself, if we were Homo sapien then, and the point there being, we were just as intellectually advanced then as we are now, brain power-wise, then why in 0.12% of our entire history have we made all this progress, but the rest of the time we've been running around with sticks and stones and wearing furs? It doesn't make any sense. So you have to at some point question the ongoing hypotheses. But the point I was trying to make there, though, is that we could be building our own doomsday god.
And has it happened before?
Well,
It's another question.
Right?
Have there been civilizations that came up so far that they got into hydrogen and nuclear bombs or similar methods and wiped each other out, and the few that survived?
Well, there is vitrification on some of the Peruvian ruins, so you don't know. It means
don't
the
know.
rock was melted at 3,000 degrees Celsius. So
It could have been a comet. We don't know.
Right.
We just it's hard to carry a message from one person to 100 people down the line, let alone thousands of years. But I would. There's a lot of conflict between what religion teaches us and what we know from science, and what it's very hard to find a medium, as I believe in both, and it's an interesting part of the human internal battle, I guess, to find the truth.
It is. I mean, what's the as a point toward your what you were saying there? What's the maximum age of human life? What's the oldest human? Like 118?
21, something like that.
So, and after the Tower of Babel, didn't God pronounce in the Bible that human beings would be limited to a number of 120 years? Makes you wonder.
Makes you wonder. I mean, you read Genesis. There's amazing stuff in Genesis that
Absolutely.
they can't prove wrong.
Well,
And that theory in Genesis is that there was God created the earth in 6 days. He separated us from the waters above and below. He put us in a firmament. And that is in direct contrast to the idea of the earth spinning at thousands of miles an hour, and then other planets spinning around us at thousands of miles. And I mean, just imagine, how do you explain that? How far do you think the naked eye can see? You're just looking out of your window, 20 miles, 30 miles. Can you see about that
depends
far?
on how high you are up and how clear it is. But you certainly can't see far enough to see the curvature of the Earth, which is why the flat earthers still believe it's flat.
Yes. Can you see stuff 775 light years away?
Nope.
Some theories say you can. There's thousands of billions of
That's
them.
right. Stars.
So you have to usually really use your brain and see if half of the stuff makes sense. You know, the more I learn, the more I question things. So if I can't see more than 20, 30 miles away, the question becomes, can I see, you know how far a light year is? Can I see hundreds of light years away? You start questioning a lot of things in your mind. But Genesis is a good start.
I'm a voracious reader of old religious texts. I am not a literalist in any sense of any of them, but I do. Every time I hear one of these wacky theories, I'll go back to source materials and I'll say, "Can you read it that way?" Huh, you can. That's interesting. I'm what I would describe as faithful but not religious. Grew up Catholic.
Yes.
And I've always been a questioner, and so I love entertaining these thoughts. If for no other reason than just the mental exercise,
Yes.
and the belief that true science is not done by seeking to prove that which you wish to believe, but rather by seeking to disprove it, because
Yes.
that is the scientific method, and I am a
Correct.
scientist at heart.
Being able to repeatedly do the same test with the same results. my thing changes from year to year because I learn new things. At some point, I thought we are the center of the universe and there is no other life form out there.
Yeah, but whenever you look at the vastness of the solar system, the math is against it.
Yes,
You know,
precisely. So you question, and
unless of course
questioning
you're a
is good.
creationist, and then you say, "Well, that's how God made it." But
This is right.
we have gone so far afield, and I apologize. But you and I will geek out about this stuff later. I've got all sorts of. I've got like the Apocrypha,
Very
the Dead
interesting.
Sea Scrolls. All
It's
sorts
good
of
to
good stuff.
expand your mind. That's how you become an innovator and you create things yourself.
Well,
Right.
and don't believe that something can't be done because someone else told you to believe that. You know,
Yes.
in a very real sense, the control that people exercise over you is limited to your allowance of that control. If you allow people to tell you the box you live in and to describe where those boxes' limitations are and where the walls are, and you believe them when they say this wall is a wall and you can't go through it, well, then you're allowing yourself to be controlled.
Yes.
And if that's how you choose to live, that is all fine and well. But I've always been of the belief that I'd like to see the walls myself and explore where it is I am.
Exactly. That's a lot of these discussions. You think we steered maybe far away from the general discussions. But these are the very points that will relate to you having independence, having a free mind to learn and make up your own decisions, make up the way you want to practice, and run your life the way you want to, devoid of these third party influences and breaking those doors down. So I think it's a healthy exercise.
Yeah, I do too. And for those of you who think this stuff is just wacky, look for any pyramid before the 16th dynasty that a body was actually found buried in. Because archaeologists will tell you they're tombs, but there's never been one.
Oh, I'm going to look at that too.
Yeah.
Yes.
That opened my eyes. When I was a kid, I knew enough science. I saw the Baghdad Battery, and I just saw an article written up about it. I was like, oh, that's so cool. You got a copper rod, and you've got acid, and you've got cathodic exchange. Oh, it's going to make electricity. It's going to be like a little weak battery. That's so cool that they figured that out back then. And then I saw the backlash. I was like, where's the sense of wonder and the sense of openness to being wrong that I had always honored scientists for? As a young man, I read our entire library at the school. Some of my favorites were the Danny Dunn books. I don't know if you remember Danny Dunn and Nancy Drew. But in one of the books, he did something and it proved the scientists wrong. And they're like, oh, that's so cool. We'll research that. And he says, that's one of my favorite things about scientists is even when they're proven wrong, they're always ready to look for the new thing, look into the new thing. And I think there's something missing there in our modern science. It's been so politicized, that otherwise rational people and people who should know better follow along with the edicts of a controlling group for political ends that they don't understand, but they're afraid of being judged for not agreeing with. And I'm not going to mention things specifically because it's still a hot button topic for some people. But I lost more respect for us as a people and as a profession in 1920 than I ever thought. I'm sorry, in 2020 rather, in 2020 than I ever thought was possible, and it disgusted me.
2020? Oh yeah, that was a very strange time. It's maybe just that was a very disgraceful period for the healthcare industry.
Anybody who looks at a shifting antigen virus and says, "Oh yeah, a vaccine's going to work," I question either your sanity.
Did you take it?
Hell no.
Smart man.
No. I had
They came
actually
down on us
already.
hard in California.
It
It's either
hit me.
lose your livelihood, not practice, or you
I know
take it.
it hit me in January. I caught it before almost anybody else had, because I had been on a plane with someone who was in California, and that was December 2019. I'd just flown to California, and I got back, and I was sick as a dog. And when the COVID stuff came out, I was sick for 2 weeks. I mean, I wanted to die type sick. 103, 104 temperatures, vomiting, and other things. We'll just put it this way. I was like a tube of toothpaste with a hole on both sides. But I knew I'd already had it. And when we finally got the ability to get the antigen test, and I took it, and sure enough, I had antibodies to it. So I know I had it early. And my thinking was, okay, well, I've got the antibodies now. Every time I catch it, it's going to get better because I'm going to have a variation every single time. And I had already studied, because I was a molecular and cellular biologist, I had already studied the effects of the vaccine on SARS and how many deaths the vaccine had caused. And I thought, it hasn't been that long since SARS, and they really haven't changed their mechanism of how they make vaccines. I don't really want to take that chance if I can get, antibodies the natural way.
I admire you for that decision. A lot of people, they took the bait, and they took it.
There's a lot of people suffering for it now, too.
A lot of people died. Years later, we're sitting here, and
Yeah,
that was shameful.
There's still people out there, no matter how much evidence is brought out.
Because it can be proven.
Fauci's involvement in the NIH can be proven. The NIH funding the research at Wuhan can be proven. The fact that the research was at Wuhan because of the fact that we outlawed it in the United States can be proven. They can trace the funding. Doge did that.
Mm-hmm.
All of that's been proven, but there's still some people out there who don't believe it was genetically engineered.
Well, you think it's too far-fetched to suggest that there is an elitist group of people that run the central banks, that oversee societies, that make decisions of what the next thing is. That this whole thing was planned. It was planned. I mean, everything points to the same thing. And many other events that happen in our world.
I'll go a slightly different route.
Possible.
I'm
open to.
I think they were having this thing made in the Wuhan lab because they couldn't do it stateside. It was illegal.
So it's planned.
That part was planned. The release, I have my suspicions that it was an accidental release.
Okay.
I believe that the response by the U.S. government and the overwhelming use of our federal government as a weapon against its own people to force compliance, and the false reports that this vaccine was working really well and this and that and the other, I believe all of that was done in an effort to combat Chinese intelligence, because I think that the U.S. government was worried that because it had been an accidental release, the Chinese government was going to look at our response and the effectiveness of our response to gauge our vulnerability to such an attack.
All that stuff is possible. All I know is
I think it was the best thing they could possibly have done in the situation, but it doesn't make it right.
I see. Yes. I remember talking to oral surgeons. I have a very good oral surgeon friend in New York who was telling me that it's all, what they're telling us, lies. The people that are dying down there in the emergency room have comorbidities. They're just blaming everything on COVID that's coming through here.
We had a family friend who died in a motorcycle accident. It was labeled as a COVID death. He had COVID.
Well, but that's ignorance, though. I mean, that
no,
goes into
funding.
the data.
It's
Funding to get paid for it. The hospitals get paid for it. It's sad. Yeah, but that shows you how fragile we are. Imagine all the civility and everything else.
Absolutely.
If you had hungry people for 3 days, they won't be as civil or as cordial on the streets.
No.
So society can break down very, very quickly.
And I don't have a bomb shelter in my backyard, and I don't have 10 years of food stocked
I
up.
don't either.
But I'll tell you, everyone needs to learn skills.
Survive, you mean?
100%. You need to know how to take care of yourself and your family, because the government will do it, but will they get there fast enough? I grew up in Lafayette, Louisiana. I saw the response to Katrina.
Katrina? Oh, that was bad.
I saw the response to Harvey over here.
Yeah.
And you
They
have
can't
to be
be there.
self-sufficient.
Yeah. At the end of the day, you're alone in the world, and your responsibilities, especially as a parent.
Absolutely. You're alone until you're not. You don't know how long it's going to be until you're not.
That's right. Right.
So, and that kind of speaks to what we were talking about earlier. Do you really want the regulators or Silicon Valley being the ones who decide, what direction AI goes?
Autonomy. You have to have autonomy.
Yeah.
You have to have autonomy. Autonomy, autonomy, autonomy. That's what I've been saying for the last 2 decades. Without autonomy, you have nothing.
I'm glad you're doing what you're doing. Taking a less alarmist track and taking a step back, we're not there yet. Our AI overlords have not, put their booted foot on our necks yet. So we can still make use of AI, and we can do so in a safe way, and we can do so in a very profitable way whenever it comes to helping us to make our practices more efficient, to economize in our practices, reduce our overhead to some extent at least. What are the best AIs you're seeing out there? And what is, if you could just wave a magic wand and tool-wise, not necessarily company-wise, but tool-wise, what is the best AI tool that you would wave a magic wand and all of a sudden every dentist in the world, they would have access to it and they could use it?
X-ray diagnosis right off the bat. You miss a lot of stuff. You go into hygiene room, you're in and out, you're doing recalls, new patient exams, while you're doing other procedures, we miss things. Having that second hand next to you, at least pointing stuff out, will make you look at things twice and make sure you don't miss anything. The next steps, I think, is there's going to be some staff disappearing in a dental practice. As these companies are constantly working on this insurance verification stuff and insurance narrative and submissions, all of the softwares that I'm aware of are working on them now, especially in the last month. And then the second thing I would look at is front desk operations. If you have 2-3 people, you could have one who is really spending time with customers, and it's not picking up phones, and it's not doing a lot of administrative burden that can be done by robots or third parties outside of the scenario. Your patient's still going to want to have that smile when they come to an office and that human interaction. So a minimum of one person in the front to focus more on customer service, while you start looking at ways to automate the burdens, the non-productive calls, the administrative tasks, the scheduling stuff, the insurance stuff, so you can create a better experience for your patients. Next thing I would start looking at is things that you can do in your waiting room to impress patients. I'm looking at a hologram.
It's called a reception room. It's never called a waiting room.
Well, reception room, okay. People correlate.
It's a pet peeve of mine.
Smart. The reception room, so to say, you have options now with holograms and informed consent and responding to questions that you might encounter in the back early on to prep the patient for what's to come. Lots of things that you can do depending on your setup while respecting people's privacy. But those would be the ones that I would currently focus on. I would also start looking at systems that manage your supplies in a way where material abuse substantially goes down. And they're starting to pop up now with the different vendors and suppliers that you're working with to trace, track, and reorder and maintain an adequate inventory in your practice that doesn't break the bank. Those are sort of the things that I would look at right now. Soon we are going to be having discussions about robots prepping crowns, but we're not there yet.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you where the nexus of algebraic efficiency and empathy and patient trust meet. And this question kind of popped into my head. I was driving the other day, and I've got my Apple AirPlay set up in my car, and someone texted me, and I realized that on the new update, they have added emotional inflection to Siri's voice when she's reading you texts. And it went something like, "Hey, Chris, when are you coming home? I miss you." And little uptick in it. And because of the fact that I've trained in listening for people's voice inflections and micro expressions and things like that from my case acceptance training I've done, it just really struck me the difference between that and the normal, you have a message, blah, 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 blah. The old 1980s robot voice we're all familiar with, or at least those of us who are as old as we are familiar with. And they just implemented that change. And that made me start thinking about the small things that we can do to polish AI to not just get that efficiency, but to bring in, at the very least, the feeling of empathy into our practices while we're using this software. So where do you think that nexus is where those two things meet? What does that look like?
Well, there are some of them now that actually joke with you and make you laugh or make it a pleasant experience for you.
Heck, there's AI girlfriends out there now. I don't know what all that's about.
It's a whole different story.
Isn't it, though?
But having the patient by you chairside where you answer the response and you turn around and in front of them ask AI to give you a similar second opinion and it concurs with what you're saying is quite powerful.
I was actually going to bring that up. I'm glad you said it. You remember my onion idea?
Yes.
One of the reasons I thought that was it would be really cool if you had all that information, wrapped around it, and it can run all the algorithms and say, okay, they're a smoker, okay, they're pregnant, any number of things that can change periodontal health or any number of things that can change your hard tissue health. And it can run all those algorithms and say, okay, based on this information about their life and their habits, then this thing I see has to be or is very likely to be blah, blah, blah. Or, hey, they have bleeding on probing and they've got 4 and 5 millimeter pockets, but some of that may be pseudo-pocketing because the woman's pregnant and she has a negative health history for all this other stuff. But to cut to the chase, my thought was, wouldn't it be great if you walk in and let's call him Bob, our AI, because I always choose female names for the AI. I don't know why. So you walk in and you say, "Hey, Miss Smith, how are you doing today?" "Oh, blah, 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 blah. Bob, can you give me a rundown on the findings?" And Bob says, "Doctor, I've noted that there's some oddities on teeth number blah, 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 blah that I'd like you to take a closer look at when you're doing your exam." So that pre-keys the dentist into looking at those things that they might have missed without undermining their authority, right?
Yes.
And then
ISAC does that. Trust AI.
Oh, very
Are you
cool.
familiar with Trust AI?
No.
Try,
Well, you told me that's a new one.
Yeah, trustdentistry.ai is a very new one. It literally is an app that when you're driving on your to work, it breaks down your patients. Instead of listening to rock and roll, maybe 5 minutes of this will help your day. I'll tell you about your patients. I'll tell you about their medical complications, what you should be looking for, what recommendations it would make on a given tooth and crown lengthening or what have you. I'll invite you to look at it. It's a very cool system. I do want to look at that because that's very similar to how I imagine this is going to end up. Because if you can imagine that, and this patient's hearing these things, and you take your look in the mouth and you say, "Yeah, I can confirm this is suspicious." It's like the intraoral camera. You remember when
Right.
it came out?
Absolutely.
You show them, they see what you see.
Exactly.
And then the resistance sort of subsides. Or there's no argument against it. Hey, look, here's this crack line. It's pretty obvious on this photo.
Right.
Here's your leaking restoration. Here's your decay.
Well, and
This
then-
is same concept on steroids.
No, absolutely. And then you say, yeah, there's gross coronal decay on tooth number 3. I'm picking on tooth number 3 for some reason today. And then, without missing a beat, the AI says, based upon Hounsfield units from the CBCT, based upon this scan, based upon this, 75% of the occlusal tooth structure of the 1/3 of the coronal 1/3 of the tooth has been compromised. Typically, you prescribe a crown in this instance, per the American prosthodontist, whatever those recommendations are, it pulls those in. Is that what you would like to do in this case, doctor? Well, I've just heard my diagnosis. It's reiterated what I'm saying. It's making a treatment recommendation that I can either agree or disagree with, but it's based upon what I generally prescribe in that instance, so no lack of autonomy. And then all the doctor has to say is, no, she has relatively low caries index. Can you confirm? Yes, doctor, it's confirmed she has low caries index. I think we can take a chance on repairing this with composite. Noted. Boop. Treatment
Boom.
planned. And treatment plan, bloop, alternative treatment crown.
And guess what? That all becomes legal documentation.
Exactly.
You have discussed the case in detail. You have contemplated different
and then
options.
the AI breaks down your notes.
Boom. Yep. There you go.
And then other doctors' notes can be as thorough as my notes.
Yes, and you don't have to stick around after the clinic hours for 2 hours writing notes.
Absolutely.
You could be at home with your kids and family.
Well, you've seen my notes. You know why they were so thorough. It's because I created macros to make sure everything got put into the note.
Amazing. I don't know how much time you spent, but those were...
I spent a lot of time on the macros. But I didn't spend very much time making notes anymore because I'd already done the work one time. Why do it 10 times?
That's right. I copy and paste the templates and I fill them in because I do the procedure almost the same.
Exactly. And if there's any
Over and over.
variation...
You'd note it.
Exactly.
Boom.
You just have to remember to put that as a choice in the macro.
Yes.
But I don't know. I think that it would increase case acceptance. I think it would increase trust. And as a result of the fiasco of the last few years, physicians and scientists have lost so much public trust. It's not funny.
Credibility.
And, I remember in 2012 when I graduated, we were one of the most trusted professions in the world.
Yes.
Where would you rank that now?
Nowhere near the top. I can tell you it's because of those same people that are chasing the dollar. They don't look behind of what destruction they leave behind, especially these third parties. Right now, this is the status of the world. You have your group of people that like you as a doctor, as a human being. They trust you without question. And then there's the vast majority of people that think that you're trying to get into their pocket and empty it out as fast as you can, with every means that you can, which is a disgraceful situation to be in as a doctor.
I agree.
And these companies and these third parties don't help it by coming in during the morning huddles and say, hey, we must meet $5,000 today or $10,000 today. This is what it leads to. Patients don't trust us anymore.
I'd go one even further. The good doctors, the ones who care, become more prone to undertreatment because they don't want to be locked into that same perception as the other doctors.
Yes.
I have seen both things grow in my time practicing. Even before I retired, I saw a great dichotomy of overtreatment and undertreatment, particularly SRPs without any real reasoning or proof. Patient comes in, they need an SRP. Oh, okay, well, cool. Let me go ahead and take a look at what the numbers are. And they bring their records in, and they've got probing depths that seem to support a diagnosis of chronic periodontal disease, chronic generalized, what have you. But there's no clinical attachment levels. Well, how do you derive your disease state without clinical attachment levels, without bleeding on probing? You don't. I mean, it's required for diagnosis.
Yep.
And, by the same token, I saw people who came in with 6, 7 class 2 lesions that were well into the dentin. And, I said cemento enamel junction earlier. I meant dental enamel junction. You didn't even correct me. You're such a nice guy. But, this tooth is blown out. Some of them not even savable. And I asked, have you ever been told about this before? No. He just said there was a lot of little areas he was watching. What the hell was he watching it do? Get more expensive? And so there's a danger in that. It's the greatest service to your patients to do your best to rid them of disease state and keep them that way.
Yep.
And leaving a cavity in place without doing anything to ablate the risk of the cavity progressing or to create a bactericidal environment that will decrease the bacteria themselves is simply leaving a vector of infection in their mouth that is going to progress and is going to spread because cavities are vectors of infection. When you have decay-causing bacteria in your mouth,
What does that
it
become
spreads.
important? Standards.
Yes.
What is our standard? Once you have a
We don't
breakthrough
have
the
any.
enamel,
We don't have any standards.
and approximately, if you break through enamel, that's your sign.
I know.
So
And it's always 50% bigger than it appears to be on the x-ray.
that's true. So you should probably intervene if you see that problem and drop a box and eliminate disease. What are the 3 things that you're trying to do in that order? Is eliminate disease, restore function, restore aesthetic. The aesthetic being our final desire. But we
Wait.
got to eliminate disease as our main priority. Eliminate disease, restore function.
So one of the
Restore
things
aesthetics.
I've always had a hard time with is for some reason dentists seem to think that part of the Hippocratic Oath is the sentence, and enamel is sacred.
Okay,
Because enamel is not sacred.
enamel is certainly not sacred, yes. But as sacred as do not harm.
Absolutely.
So if you're leaving a decay behind that can progress knowingly, consciously, then you're doing harm.
I agree. It's got to be balanced, though. It really does. But to me, it's remove disease state. That's your job.
It's the
See
first
it.
priority. Eliminate disease. That's our first priority as clinicians.
Your job is not to be liked. It's a bonus to be liked.
There are ways
But
so
you
you
can-
can be liked.
You can be
have a
liked
mission.
by taking good care of people. You don't have to be liked by seeing them every week and tell them how great they're doing when they've got class 2 lesions on every damn tooth and they've got wear in their canines because, they've been grinding their teeth at night. They've got bruxism. They've got all the signs of sleep apnea. They've got a lesion. I had one lady came in first exam, took a CBCT like we always do, and looked in her mouth. There was some suspicious looking discoloration. I'm trying to remember. It was approximately in the upper left-hand side. And on that same side, there was a domed mass in the sinus, which usually pseudocysts of the maxillary
You
sinus.
see that often.
But I see all those things together, and I said, how have you been feeling? I've been feeling really bad. Been going to the doctor a lot. They're running all these blood tests. They can't find anything. So I said, okay, I want you to go and get this biopsy. Turns out it was metastasis from her liver.
Oh, you caught one of those. That's
Yeah.
great.
And all it was paying attention, bringing it to the patient's attention, listening to her. She wrote me the nicest note. She told me
You
her
saved the
oncologist-
life.
I did.
That was great.
Her
You know, those
oncologist told
people that
her.
are chasing back to those guys, they're not spending
No, they're
time
not
looking
saving
for
lives either.
cancer. They're not looking for cancer.
No, they're
in the
not.
mouth. So that patient, if that patient would have died and it was on you, not to have found that in the mouth, and they'll come and haunt you and destroy your career. All that chasing for nothing. In 1 minute, they could lose it all.
Sadly, I guess it's a great thing for them out there, but I don't think that's true. I don't think people expect it of dentists to find that stuff until they go looking for someone to blame. Until they get to the stage of grief where they're like, why did this happen to me? I want someone to blame. I think they don't expect it because we don't do a good enough job
But some get
fulfilling
caught.
our obligations.
You look at malpractice cases.
Yeah.
People
Well, I know
that
you see a
didn't
lot more of
catch
them
it.
than I do.
People that don't catch stuff on CTs, don't catch stuff in the mouth, and there's some kind of an evidence that they existed when they visited you, they get in grave trouble.
We're
Some
the,
lose their license.
we're
Some
the only people in the healthcare field that before there's a problem, we can see a pineal tuner. The only ones.
Yep.
But how many dentists out there know about brain sand and own a CBCT?
Not many. That's why it's all so upside down. You're always stronger together. That's why I'm trying to create this model, because you will have that environment where there's a radiologist, different specialties looking at different things. Right now, it's one guy who's the king of the kingdom, and you come in, you get a treatment based on that person's beliefs and interpretations and ideas around the world and their profession. That's how it is.
And it's the Dunning-Kruger effect.
Yep.
You know, until you realize just how much more there is to know, you think you know everything there is to
We don't
know.
nothing.
But we know nothing. We really don't.
We know very little bit to do our job, and we should always be open to learn more and absorb more. We know nothing. You're right.
So to end this on a more upbeat note, our AI overlords are not going to take over. We're going to go down the right road. Your new model of dentistry that you're proposing takes off, and it makes a real difference in the way that dentists are trained and the way that they treat and the way that they practice. And dental insurance is outlawed. We'll start there. Now, we'll leave that one alone. But assuming those first two things, where do you see dentistry hand in hand with AI in 10 years if we go down the right road and we make the right decisions and we adopt a different way of doing things as practicing oral physicians?
I have a dream. Okay. The vision that I see is a very prosperous time ahead for doctors. Less staff, less overhead, less headache, similar or better improved profit for doctors, less interference, less politics, less drama in the healthcare facility, more trust by patients, our lives getting easier and easier so we can have our family lives at home. I see a very prosperous future if we just unite, a fraction of us unite and control it before it completely takes over every aspect of our lives and destroys us. I see something very, very helpful that's going to reduce our stress, improve our mental abilities, our mental state, our duties as a parent, our duties as a husband or a wife, our responsibilities to patients. I think all of those areas will be improved if and only if we control artificial intelligence and guide its directions. Any other scenario screams of disaster and misery.
Well, my friend, thank you for coming out here and chatting with me and chatting with us on this podcast. And do you have any final words you'd like to leave people with?
It's an honor. I encourage many of our colleagues who are the voices in this profession to come out. This is one of the best experiences I've had. I've done over 450 of my own of these podcasts, and at least been on over 50 other shows, but nothing this detailed ever before with this kind of an amazing setup. You're not only a dentist, but you're quite astute in the creative arts, and it was a true honor to come here and very well worth my time, and thank you for having me on the show. I really appreciate it.
Anytime. Always my pleasure. And we'll have to get you on again real soon. And guys, thank you so much for giving us your time today. Until the next time, this is Doc. I'm out.
And watch me educate. Yeah, we been, could've started, but it's never late. Do it for my kids, yeah, let's set it straight. straight. Do it for your kids, kids gotta set it straight. It's time to regulate. We need change now.